So Wayne, wanted to talk with you a little bit today about some of your recent experiences with the Innovation 360 suite. And in particular, I'm interested in your most recent client and how that went initially for you. And I want to sort of take the conversation a little bit to sort of the implications of the COVID situation, whatever. But let's sort of start with maybe a little bit of a background around your client.
So the client is a secondary, a post-secondary education institution that is focused on entrepreneurship skills development. They're a relatively small organization, publicly funded with a board of directors, and the management was interested. I mean, as a core skill of entrepreneurship, management was most interested in having innovation as one of their keys. The nature that an entrepreneur is somewhat flexible and looking for new ways to develop their business on an ongoing basis. So that they wanted to know, as a teaching organization, that they are addressing the needs of that client. They're also leading the client towards broader thinking, which would include innovation. So their interest was really to see where they were. Initially to see where they were. The CEO told me that I don't really care what the answer is. I just want to know what my baseline is. And based on that, then we can figure out how to improve from there. And the methodology, provided a baseline for them as far as their core abilities, but also poked at particular areas that they could use to then increase their innovation maturity.
So I have a little bit more insight into your experience because I've talked to you about it before. But tell me about the sort of experience.
The data that came out of the analysis, resonated with the client in that, in many respects, it brought out thoughts that they had themselves. In the case of some of the executive team, they had been thinking that this was a particular area that they needed to develop, but they hadn't had the conversation or they weren't comfortable having the conversation. And, this sort of put everything on the table as far as where the key opportunities were for them to develop. And it was helping them to make the case that they had hoped to make. What was unexpected was that it also provided some insight into their customer base who filled out the survey as part of the external analysis. And it gave some insight into the culture and mindset of the people who were in their course. And in some cases, we were able to break it down to particular groups where you've got an entrepreneurship organization, and you've got a highly conservative group of customers that are risk averse. Why are they in an entrepreneurship organization? Are they in the right school? So it got that thinking came out of it as well. It also pointed to areas on their board where they were looking for leadership and a board that can push them to grow. But in many respects, their board was highly conservative and somewhat innovation reverse.
So none of us expected that come sort of February, March, this COVID crisis would appear. So, and it appeared right in the middle of this work that you were doing with the client. How did it affect how you went to how you dealt with the client and what sort of interactions you had with them?
Well, I mean, the engagement began online and actually ended with the final report being done in a highly distanced face-to-face meeting. But in the middle, there was a significant amount of online work. As a school going through COVID-19, all of a sudden their entire world had been upended as well, where all of a sudden they were going from a face-to-face school to an online school, so that they were in the throes of dealing with remote technology or virtual technology, so that conducting the meetings, you'd think that it would be awkward, and we've all seen the videos where people have awkward Zoom meetings and that sort of thing, but it was highly productive. Aside from the analysis, which the online survey which was done, I conducted a number of one-on-one conversations, and those were all done virtually. And it was very easy. It was very comfortable. And to some extent, the technology helped. They were sitting in a more comfortable environment. They were more relaxed. We weren't sitting across a table and all sorts of awkward formal office things. And as a result, the conversation was really quite natural. In the end, when the final report came down, we could have done it virtually. In fact, we had a follow-up meeting virtually with the entire executive team.
We've gone through the journey from the basic course all the way through to black belt and engaged with some of the network and that kind of stuff. How did this interaction or sort of assessment process sort of change as you went through the different stages?
Well, definitely richer. I started out, I think from our training, we learned about, conscious competence. I started out from a position of conscious competence. And through the course of the interaction and dealing with the data and, working with the data on an ongoing basis, I found it became very rich and very natural. And, it was far less mechanical. It was more of seeing a picture of the data as opposed to reading numbers. So it was valuable. By all means, go all the way through the certification. Go for all three belts, because at each level there's real value that comes out. I found I used some of the tools from all of the training.